In 2005, a school trip turned disaster when a 14-year-old boy found himself fighting against a fast-rising flood, alone and helpless. 20 years before that, one Eric Tsakle found himself squeezing past a boulder when the boulder moved, having his head crushed by it. But before we get to all this, let us first witness what is probably the most horrifying caving tragedy in New Zealand's history. A story of how an improper building of a viewing platform led to the death of 13 children and one officer. On April 28, 1995, a group of 17 students from Tai Putini Polytechnic embarked on what was supposed to be an exciting field trip to Paparoa National Park in New Zealand. Their destination was the Cave Creek viewing platform, a wooden structure perched above a stunning 40-meter hole where a small stream emerges dramatically from an underground cave system. The day was meant to be one of exploration and learning, an opportunity to connect with the beauty of the natural world. The group, accompanied by 2 Department of Conservation or DOC officers, made their way through the park's rugged trails. Along the way, they split into 2 groups. The first group, consisting of 17 students and 1 DOC officer, arriving at the viewing platform around 11:25 a.m. They were excited to gaze down at the hole and take in the beautiful scenery around them. But this excitement got out of hand when some of the students leaning against the railing started shaking the structure. The platform rocked back and forth as waves of laughter and screams echoed down the hole below. But some members of the group, scared for their safety, warned the others to stop rocking the platform. Unfortunately, before they could stop, the platform groaned under the weight and stress. In a sudden, horrific moment, the entire structure gave way, plunging the students and the DOC officer 40 meters onto the jagged rocks below. Screams followed as wood and humans fell down into destruction. Because of the incredible distance between the platform and the cave below, those who hadn't lost consciousness whimpered and tried to call for help, but found it difficult. The pain was too enormous, and the chances of survival were almost absent. The second group arrived minutes later, only to be confronted with a scene of devastation. Desperate to get help, a DOC officer and one of the students from the second group ran back toward the start of the trail. When they reached the group's vehicles, they realized the keys were missing, delaying their ability to summon help. By 12:15 p.m., he reached a phone and contacted the police in Greymouth. The remote location of the platform made rescue efforts painstakingly slow. The first responder, a police constable, arrived on foot 2 hours after the collapse. It was later discovered that 4 students had miraculously survived the fall but were severely injured. Ambulances from Greymouth and Westport eventually arrived, followed by helicopters from Christchurch, but for the 14 victims, it was already too late. The disaster sent shockwaves through New Zealand, and the government immediately launched a commission of inquiry to uncover what went wrong. The findings were damning. The platform, constructed by the Department of Conservation just a year earlier, had been built without proper oversight. No qualified engineer had approved the design, nails were used instead of bolts, and no building consent had been obtained. As for the 4 students who survived, one of them opened up later that he was haunted by what happened. He revealed that he was part of the students who rocked the platform until it dropped. But experts believe that if the students hadn't disturbed the platform, it would still have fallen, if not that day, certainly another time. In any case, the aftermath brought profound changes to New Zealand's building regulations and accountability. The government allocated $2.6 million to compensate victims' families, and new laws were introduced to ensure government departments could be held liable for negligence. Unfortunately, for this next caving incident, nobody was compensated because it was just nature punishing an unavoidable mistake. On the afternoon of November 28, 1985, a group of 7 cavers ventured into the Culver Creek system in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. Known for its expansive network of passages spanning over 20 miles, the cave was both awe-inspiring and challenging. Recent heavy rainfall had caused widespread flooding and damage across the region, leaving many caves unstable. The group had initially planned to explore Friar's Hole, but changed their plans due to the risk of high water. Though unfamiliar to them, Culverson Creek Cave seemed like a safer choice. What they didn't realize was that the recent rainfall had weakened the cave's stability, setting the stage for disaster. At around 3:45 p.m., the group entered the cave through the Fuller entrance, a narrow passage where a shallow stream ran swiftly over loose rock slabs. 50 feet inside, they encountered a large boulder, 5 feet tall, 7 feet long, and tapering from 4 to 5 feet wide at the base. The route past the boulder offered two choices: wade through the narrow corridor on the left, where the stream flowed between the rock and the cave wall, or climb over the lower slope of the boulder near the wall on the right. Eric Tsakle, a 26-year-old group member, chose the left-hand route. 3 other group members also chose this route, but let Tsakle take the lead. Unfortunately, as he passed the boulder's midpoint, the unthinkable happened. Without warning, the massive rock shifted, tilting toward the stream. The group desperately tried to stop its movement but couldn't. In a matter of seconds, the boulder pinned Tsakle by his head against the cave wall, trapping him in a standing position. His left temple and shoulder were pressed against the wall, while his right cheekbone was crushed against the rock. Tsakle lost consciousness within 30 seconds of being pinned and stopped moving after about a minute. At 3:59 p.m., John Evans, one of the group's members, checked Tsakle's pulse and found it strong, but blood trickled from his left nostril. Despite the shock of the situation, the group immediately sprang into action. One member of the group left the cave to call for help, while the others tried everything they could do to free Tsakle. Using their hands, they attempted to move the massive boulder but had no success. At 4:10 p.m., another member of the group left to call the Eastern Region Cave Rescue Network, while one caver retrieved a hydraulic jack. By 4:20 p.m., the hydraulic jack had arrived. Using it along with crowbars, the group was able to move the boulder just enough to free Tsakle. They carried him to a dry spot 20 feet away and began performing CPR. Minutes later, the Rennick Rescue Squad arrived, and a paramedic took over CPR. But despite their best efforts, Tsakle showed no signs of recovery. At 5:25 p.m., Tsakle was evacuated from the cave on a stretcher and transported by ambulance to the nearest hospital. During the journey, paramedics administered IV fluids and cardiac drugs, but it was too late. Eric Tsakle was pronounced dead at 6:05 p.m. The tragedy left the group devastated and the caving community shaken. Tsakle's death was analyzed as one of those rare and unpredictable events where the timing and location aligned tragically. The group had done everything in their power to save him, risking their own safety to work under the now unstable boulder. Finally, we move to what is probably the saddest caving disaster on this list. Joseph Lister was a bright and inquisitive 14-year-old boy who loved exploring the outdoors. His head teacher at Tadcaster Grammar School described him as an absolute delight who lived for life. So when a school trip was announced, he was more than excited to participate. On the first day of the school trip, Joseph and 100 other students arrived at the Burley Park Outdoor Education Center, a facility operated by North Yorkshire County Council in Nidderdale. Accompanied by 9 teachers and under the supervision of experienced instructors, the trip promised a week of activities such as canoeing, hill walking, and abseiling. On hearing the activities, Joseph was itching to begin his exploration without any delays. He was soon assigned to a group of 11 students bound for Manchester Hole, a cave often considered an ideal introduction to caving due to its accessibility. However, the Manchester Hole was also known to be prone to flooding. But since they didn't plan to venture beyond what was considered safe, there was nothing to worry about. Besides, they had an experienced instructor guiding them every step of the way. The exploration began like any other, with students excitedly exploring the underground chambers of the cave system. But as the group delved deeper into the cave, rising water levels quickly turned the situation dangerous. Instructors made the decision to return to the surface, but as they hurried back, Joseph became separated from the rest of the group. No one knew exactly what happened. Maybe as they rushed back, Joseph slipped and was dragged deeper into the cave. Or it could also be that, spurred by his love for adventure, he had decided to not exit the cave with his assigned group. He probably didn't want the expedition to end so soon, knowing how much he loved to explore. But whatever the reason is, Joseph was unfortunately caught by the fast-rising flood, the kind that would even drown expert swimmers. Outside, his group made it to safety. The instructors quickly did a head count and were floored by their discovery. Joseph was missing. They quickly reported the situation, and 2 rescue teams from Upper Wharfdale Fell Rescue Team were dispatched immediately. The teams went straight for the flooded section, which had stopped rising. They worked very fast and were able to locate him 250 meters into the cave. Unfortunately, they didn't meet the lively and eager Joseph. What they found was a lifeless Joseph suffering from acute hypothermia. The rescuers tried CPR and attempted to warm him up, but the kid didn't respond. They tried even harder on their way to Harrogate District Hospital, but he never came back. Shortly after arriving at the hospital, he was pronounced dead at around 5 p.m. His parents, Martin and Paula Lister, were at his bedside. Back in Steeton, near Tadcaster, grief enveloped the Lister family. Friends and neighbors rallied around Martin and Paula and their 2 surviving children, Ben and Laura, offering comfort in the face of their unimaginable loss. At Tadcaster Grammar School, Joseph's death cast a shadow over the community. Head teacher Jeff Mitchell described Joseph as a popular and curious young boy who brought energy and honesty to every interaction. Mr. Mitchell was quoted as saying, "He would bounce along into your room, talk to you about things, and he'd actually do something that was incredibly refreshing for young people. He would tell you the truth. He was an absolute delight, and our hearts go out to the family." Those were 3 caving disasters that shocked the world. Which one saddened you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.